Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our webinar today on the topic of supporting boys in the Peace Program. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sonia Bhatia, and I am the Children and Youth Services Coordinator at BCSTH. My role is to support peace programs across the province, and I'll share a few more details about how I do that and also how BCSTH can support the work you're doing in the next couple of slides. I do want to take a few moments to introduce my two wonderful colleagues who have helped put together this webinar for you all today. I've got Andrea Stency from House and Women's Centre and Colleen Making from Safe Society here with us today. So Andrea, if you'd like to start.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea, as Sonia said, and I'm so happy to be here and to share some of my experiences working with boys in the Peace Program. I've been a peace counselor for about 8 years in Squamish here at the House and Women's Centre, and previous to that I did some work with Vancouver Rape Relief and the Kawartha Sexual Assault Centre in Ontario. And I just feel so passionate about this topic and about bringing boys more into the conversation and more into this work. Over to you, Colleen.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Colleen, and I'm with the Safe Society in Salmon Arm. And I have been in the program, doing the Peace Program for 24 years. And people always say, how can I do this work? And I always respond with, I don't know how to sing, but I do know how to relate to kids. It's just something that I've always been drawn to. And I started way back in the 80s at a women's shelter in downtown Toronto during a very feminist time movement. And I've been passionate about working with children and lately with boys. And I've had lots of different jobs over the years working with children, but I have been drawn to boys because I foster children, and I've had quite a few boys that I've raised in my home. And I've also billeted hockey players, and just having a different in conversation with a different group of boys has been quite interesting. So I leave that passion to speak about how to relate and connect with boys.
Excellent. Thank you both. So we'll just go over a few logistics now. So once again, we want to thank everyone for being here today. We know how busy you all are, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. The webinar will be recorded, and I will send out the link to all peace programs via listserv for folks who couldn't join us today. So please stay tuned for that. The email that I will be sending out, in addition to having the YouTube recording of this webinar, there will also be a resource list that our librarian has prepared on this topic, along with any resources that may be mentioned during this webinar. Because this is going to be recorded, we are going to mute everyone for now. If you have any questions, please use the chat function on the side panel, and we will address your questions at the end. Okay, so we'll start off with sharing a little bit about the BC Society of Transition Houses. So BCSTH is a nonprofit member association of transition, second and third stage houses, safe homes, and peace programs, and other programs which serve the needs of women and their children experiencing violence. We also link BC schools with peace programs through our VIP, Violence is Preventable program, and Believe projects. How BCSTH can support you. Through training, resources, advocacy, and research, BCSTH serves and supports anti-violence workers providing support services and programs for women, children, and youth experiencing violence. Our support includes developing and delivering training, including our annual training forum, keeping members up to date on emerging provincial, national, and international issues, advocating on behalf of our membership to government and other stakeholders, providing public education and prevention activities, providing a free library of resources to members, researching and publishing position papers on legal issues, policy analysis, practice guidance, and more. We also have an active listserv where peace programs can pose questions to other counselors and share ideas. If you are not already on our listserv yet, please let me know and I will add you. We also share information related to both Peace and VIP on these listservs, so it's great if all Peace counselors to be connected this way. I've also put my contact information on this slide. Please contact me directly if you ever have any questions about Peace or VIP, and I'll be happy to help you in any way that I can. So the reason why we're facilitating this webinar today is because for the past few years, our membership has been requesting resources for supporting and working with boys in the Peace program. This webinar is the first response to that request. This webinar is intended to be the beginning of a large conversation on this topic. In addition to this webinar, we will also be facilitating a workshop at our annual training forum, which will be from October 23rd to October 25th, so please stay tuned for that. This is our agenda for today's webinar. So we'll discuss the following 5 topics to support the work that you're already doing with boys in the Peace program. So we will talk about some engagement strategies, relationship building, strategies for working with boys in different developmental age ranges, share some practical tips, and also some sample activities. We recognize that it can be challenging engaging boys in the Peace program. Our goal for this webinar is to share some tips and strategies that will support the wonderful work that you're already doing. We acknowledge that not all tips and strategies may work exactly the way they're being shared, so please feel free to adapt them to meet the needs of your program participants. Colleen and Andrea will share some tips and engagement strategies that they use and find helpful when they're working with boys in the Peace program.
Right, so Andrea here. I would love to begin this conversation around engagement strategies. And I guess I also wanted to share that I sent out an email to the listserv a few months ago requesting some support for activities to do in a boys group. And that's how I got drawn into this conversation. And I received so many wonderful tips and resources from the Peace counselors across the province. So I'm very thankful for that, and also just a little plug-in for the listserv because it's such a great resource. So lots of these activities were drawn from those suggestions. So I guess the first thing in engaging boys is maybe obvious, but to be truly authentic. So to engage with any of our clients, it's so important to have a genuine interest in their lives, have a genuine interest in who they are and what they're bringing in that moment, in that day. And I find it really helpful to be really, really curious about the person that is sitting in front of me. And it is also a personal practice in terms of being present with the person. So always remembering to sort of clear distractions from my mind and be as present as possible with this boy or girl that is sitting in front of you in the moment, and be curious from your own heart as to what this person is bringing and what they can teach you and what they can offer you. So then also, of course, we need to be building rapport and allowing the boys in front of us to really come to a place of trust with us, because often they come in and maybe their parents told them they had to come, or they don't know what's going to happen at this group, and it's really, you want to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So in building rapport, I find it so helpful to see what is sort of emerging as a place of interest for the participants in the group or the individual client in front of you. So really, really, again, that curiosity piece around what is it that you're really excited about? What is it that you love to do? And then, be side by side with them as they explain that to you. And like any little lead, any little thread that they give you, you can really pick up on it and get interested in their life. And that is super supportive for me in terms of building rapport. And then before any session, I like to have what I think of as like a game plan. So in the back of my head, I'll always have sort of a few activities or a few games that I would like to participate in with the client. And of course, so Colleen and I are going to go through lots and lots of examples of specific activities that you can do for all different age ranges. But it's always, I find it super helpful. It's like it's almost, I imagine I'm wearing a backpack that has all these different activities in it. And then I have ideas that I can draw from to do with the client. But then also having this flexibility that if they are interested in something else, that you go with that in terms of building that rapport and giving them a sense of like, oh wow, this person's really interested in me, and this person really is taking an interest in who I am and what I'm bringing. So it's like have a game plan, but then be flexible and allow yourself to completely drop that and go with what they're interested in. And then, so I guess I spoke to that a little bit about being mindful and flexible while building rapport. And something specific I've found with boys is often they feel uncomfortable face-to-face, and they'll open up quite a lot more or feel more relaxed if they're side by side. So often I'll position myself, if we're going to be doing an activity, I'll often position myself beside them instead of across from them. And even for like an opening check-in, right now I'm speaking specifically to individual sessions, but I'll often, at that first check-in, I won't sit like face-to-face. We'll just go side by side. Or what works really well with boys is going outside and going for a walk, I find. And then it's just like it's more of a relaxing environment, I find, for them. And snacks is a great way to engage children in general and boys. I think there's people connect over food. It's very natural. And the snacks is a big piece for lots of clients that come in, and lots of times for group, it's like the first thing that they're going to be really excited about. It's like, what's for snack today? And this, I find, is a very easy way in to work with boys. So it's like, what do you like to eat? And then, maybe you can prepare that together, or maybe the next week when they come, if it's a possibility for your agency then to provide that favorite food that they have. And, it's like showing them that you're taking these extra steps to meet their needs and to remember what they really liked, and that's really special for lots of children that are accessing the program. So I can't speak more highly about having lots of snacks, and snacks are nice for us too. All right, so getting the buy-in. So always thinking about, why are these boys going to want to come back to the program? Why are they going to want to come back to the second group? And why are they going to want to come back for individual counseling? Often I find it's, if you can start an activity or like an art project or a conversation even, and then have it that, in the next group or the next session, we're going to keep working on that. And so there's this like follow through the next week, and maybe they'll be excited to come back and continue the work on this, on the art or the activity. And I'll speak about a few of those activities that can carry through session to session a little bit later. But that is a nice way to get the buy-in as well. I will say again, the snacks are a good buy-in, because they will probably be excited to come back and have more popcorn the following week. And I think it's really important to remember that it's okay for there to be silence, and it's okay for there to be empty spaces in a group and in an individual session with boys. So we're not always sort of like packing it with like activities and like fun-filled games. And it's not, I remind myself of this a lot. It's not my job to be like an entertainer for our clients, but it's really like to just listen and to be quiet and to witness them and to watch them and to notice what they're doing. All of this goes a long way, and it also, I think, a little bit speaks to the culture we live in terms of like it's a go, 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 go for lots of lots of children, and if they have a space that they can come to where like they don't have to be anybody, they don't have to perform anything, they don't have to do anything in particular, they just have this space where they can come and they can actually relax and they can just be themselves, and they're not going to be judged or, called out in them, and just like this really, really quiet, safe space for them to just be. And I think that is really a true gift that we can give our clients. So practicing getting more comfortable with the silence or the space between the activities or the thoughts, and just having this perspective where we can witness them and watch them and really, again, be curious and see what they're doing. And then the last thing I'll say about engagement strategies is to be an active participant. So I know I just said a whole bunch about witnessing them, but then also when you're doing an activity, don't just watch them, and get in there and actually play with them and do the art with them and do the game or the drama activity with them, and be side by side with them, so they really feel like they have an ally in the relationship, and that you're really there to be a part of their lives and to enjoy the session with them. And that is what I have to say about that. I'm going to pass it over to Colleen now.
Thank you, Andrea. So I have to first by saying that when I was putting this together, my lens was I do a lot of work with boys 14 to 19. So I was looking at it from I work with lots of boys of all age ranges. I certainly have a large caseload of boys that are 14 plus. And so I wanted to look at what's the perspective of when we think about boys. And, when we think of our own perceptions or biases, experiences, and judgments, because when we see a group of seniors, we don't kind of say in our minds, oh, look at that gang of seniors over there. But when we see a group of boys together, and because I do work in our high school every week, I don't look at the boys and go, oh, look at that gang of boys. They're just the boys that I know that drop in to see me. But if we have a perspective of thinking of them in a gang culture or in a negative way, that does influence how we can be relatable to them. So it's really checking ourselves about where am I at with this and how comfortable, because it is about being real and raw sometimes. Sometimes you just, if I'm playing cards with a boy, I'm I'm not going to let you win. Come on, you have to play too. This is not, we're going to be challenging each other, especially once relationship is built. And amazing things can happen when we can be that way with people and be genuine and honest. And anger. This is something, lots of parents over the years have brought their kids in to see me, to fix my kid. And so kids will be I'll say, so why do you think you're here? I'll have that conversation with them. And because my mom said I had to come. I have a problem with anger. And we'll talk about that. Is it really a problem with anger, or do they have a legitimate reason for being angry based on their life experiences? And the strategies that they've been shown to deal with their anger haven't been helpful or healthy coping skills. So how do we challenge that perceptive in them to talk about it? It's okay to be angry, but how do we role model different avenues of taking care of that anger? And then it comes to how do we validate feelings? How do we really show that and really help people understand what a feeling is? When I ask kids what a feeling is, they're it's an emotion. And I'm okay, but what's an emotion? And I'm well, it's happy. And I'm well, that's an example of an emotion or a feeling. But what are they? And I don't know, in all the years that I've done this, people have a really, no one's ever really been able to answer that. They just kind of keep giving examples or flipping between it's a feeling or it's an emotion. And I try to explain it to kids that it's a message from your body that we just need to take care of something. So, if we feel cold and we don't take care of that and it's minus 30 out, you're going to be in big trouble. And so feelings are not a gender thing. They're a human thing that support us in our health and well-being. So how do we have those conversations in real ways with boys? Because we have kind of feminized feelings. And so we want to make sure that we're talking to boys about feelings in a way that is relatable to them. I'll often say to kids, and they all look at me like I'm crazy, but I'll say, oh, so I'm hungry, it's your fault, you better go eat a sandwich. And they're like, what? And I'm like, but how many times do you hear that it's your fault that I'm angry? And so we try to just break that down through lots of conversation and really understanding the purpose of feelings. Why do we have them? What are they for? And it's that connection between our brain and our body, and how do we take care of them? And having that in a real way, about a human way, as opposed to a gender way. And so those are some ideas of how to engage and really have those conversations with boys. So other examples of, for me, engagement is that side-by-side, being with them. And Andrea spoke to this, but like, just because I'm old, we didn't have the internet back in my day, so I know a ton of card games, like a ton of card games. So I will play cards with anyone, anywhere, anytime. I also have a dice game, and the rolling of the dice and the sound of the dice, the boys love. Like, they're just every time, okay, where are the dice? We can sit by side. They don't have to, and the amount of conversation that comes as they get comfortable with you is amazing. So it's really helped me over the years with all ages of boys to be able to play cards or dice games. I also have a great book that just, you can pull out a page and it makes different paper airplanes. So for boys that need to be active, and then they have races and throw the planes in my office, and they have a great time making the planes, throwing the planes. It's quite inexpensive. You get 200 different types of planes, so that lasts a long time for kids. And another great game is Whiz Kids by Discovery Toys, which I have all of this. The resource for the paper airplanes book is an Usborne book, and it's listed later on in the resources in the webinar. Whiz Kids is an open-ended game. This is great in groups with boys. They love it. It's just a very open-ended conversation starter. You pick a random letter out of the deck, and it gives you points, and then it says, something in this room that starts with the letter A, and people have to shut it out. So just mix and matches. It's a great way to just get conversation going and kids feeling comfortable. Listening, just being open. Not having it's great to have the backpack of activities. It's great to have all of that, but I find sometimes, and I've done this myself, and I catch myself doing this, where I'm like, oh, I got to talk about this or tell them this, and I'm like, nope. You have to kind of shut off your brain and just hear what people are saying as opposed to the answer to what they're saying. Because sometimes kids don't need us, boys, don't need us to fix it. They just need to be heard. And that helps us build trust when we can do that. And in reflective listening is just a way of being with children and validating them. And especially with younger children, I think it works with older boys as well. But certainly for younger boys, I've had lots of boys who say, I'm not coming in there, I'm not coming into your room, I'm not coming to this group. And I'm like, that's okay, that's your choice. I give them choice. I reflect back to them. I listen to them. And by the end of group, they're like, they don't want to leave. When can I come back? And then parents will often say, what are you doing to my kids? I didn't think they'd ever come into your room. Now they just want to come and see you all the time. And I think that's a real testament to how well reflective listening works. And I do have a handout on that. And if I didn't send it to Sonia, I can always get that to her to send out, because it's very specific wording to follow the reflective listening. So having a lot of tools to draw on really helps engage. And when I think about just all the different tools and all the different strategies, I think about just current pop culture, because kids, will talk about Stranger Things. So if I don't know about Stranger Things, it's hard to have a conversation with them. So I don't necessarily need to watch it all, even though I do like that show. I just need to know something about it to be relevant to have that conversation with them. So I try to educate myself about what kids are really liking and what they're talking to me about. Or I am being the news reporter, and I'm like, tell me more about that. I haven't heard about that. How does that work? So I use those types of strategies. I have tons and tons of free play. So Lego, cars, kinetic sand. I have lots of teenage boys that are into dirt biking and snowmobiling, so it's just like I have to immerse myself and try to understand some of that world to have conversations with them that are meaningful to them. But all of those tools and strategies develop for me positive relational health. It's just about that connection, because a lot of these boys in particular don't feel like people see them. And I just know from my experience, when you can make that attachment, that connection with them, and because I've been doing this work so long, I've had so many young men come back to me in their adult life to talk about the difference it made. Having that positive relational health, having someone that listened to you, having somebody that they felt really cared about them and where they were, and the changes it made for them. So when we can do that, it really does make a difference. And it really, all of these types of activities, well, some people say, well, you're just playing with them or you're not really doing anything. It really is doing something for them. And if anybody knows Dr. Bruce Perry's work on the neurosequential model of therapeutics, it really helps with the sensory integration. Any of those sensory, like repetitive, like the dice game or card games that are playing cars or playing in a sandbox, those are all things that help build sensory integration. They're repetitive, they're rhythmic, and if the boys are enjoying them, it's really going to help them with that development through sensory integration. And now we're going into some activities with Andrea.
Thanks, Colleen. So I know that when I first became a peace counselor, I always thought, what am I going to do with these children? And I always was so keen to hear about what other people were doing and to get sort of like this inspiration and ideas around activities. So I'm happy to share. Between Colleen and I, we have lots for you. So I'm excited to share all these with you that have worked for me over and over and over. So these are like tried, tested, and true. So the first one is Jenga. And you can write a question on the Jenga piece. And then this game really does work, I mean, maybe not for 3-year-olds, but probably 5 and up, all the way up to teenagers. I even actually played this game with some caregivers during our intake session. And it just depends on what questions you put on the game. So I have actually 2 Jenga games. One's for younger children and one's for older children. And the questions are based on the ages. So, for example, like younger ones would be like, what's your favorite food? And where's a place you feel really safe? Things like that. And then older children might be like, how do you define family? Or what makes you feel really comfortable? Or what's the nicest thing someone's ever said to you? But really it's about having these like sort of thought-provoking questions on them that can open a conversation. It's a great icebreaker, and often I did play this with, in the last boys group I did, and the boys, we actually played Jenga the entire hour. We didn't do anything else, but it was just like beautiful way to build rapport between them, and they all got to know each other on a different level. So the next is garbage art. So I have a huge box in my office where we basically put lots of like random different garbage things, like even pizza boxes and wire, pipe cleaners, styrofoam, and then you can end up building like big robots or statues or just like I had a boy build like an entire city once out of garbage. And this is again one of those activities that can carry over session to session, and they can then keep building on their garbage art every time they come in. It's also a great way to recycle. It's good for the environment. So that I would say, yeah, I think I put in ages 3 to 12. So, and then the next is like building. Seems really simple, but building a fort. Boys love building forts and like putting up the blankets to make the roof, and then building little beds underneath. And I've had like 14-year-old boys build forts in my office. We built forts in a boys group once, and it went over really well. And then they, went into this huge imaginative play about their different houses and going house to house and inviting each other over, and it was really a lovely game. So building forts, giving clients a safe place and really empowering them to actually build that safe place for themselves. And then you can also watch their demeanor change once they go into their fort, into their safe space. And then splatter paint. So boys love splatter paint. Definitely make sure you have like a smock or just extra clothes that they can put on, and then go outside, get a giant piece of paper, tape it down to the ground, and let them pick 3 colors, and then let them splatter, 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 and good opportunity to talk about like maybe different feelings that they're letting out, maybe different ways they want to move their body to move anger out or frustration or overwhelm. And then often the splatter paint will then turn into finger painting, so then the paintbrushes go down and then they're all in with their hands, and it's always a hit. And then to layer on top of the splatter paint is to paint balloons. So this is something this is a kind of a new activity, and it is so fun. So you blow up a balloon and then put layers and layers and layers and layers of paint on it, usually with your hands. And so it's so messy and the kids love it. And then the next week when they come back, you pop the balloon, and it basically it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, but it's cool when it does. And it turns into confetti. You pop the balloon in it, and then the dried paint goes everywhere. So again, it's a good thing to do outside. But it's definitely like a fun overlapping activity. They are always so excited to come back the next week and pop their balloons. And then what I've found with boys is making noise. So having drums, having all kinds of different musical instruments available. I don't know. I will add it to the resource list. If anyone's seen the boom whackers, or these like big sticks that you can hit on surfaces, and they make a specific tone. And so it's kind of sounds like music, but they're also just like whacking things as hard as they can. And then they can have kind of like sword fights with the boom whackers, but it makes these really neat sounds. So that's definitely a big hit. We had those available at our last boys group, and they were 11 to 13, and it was a big hit. And so I would say that would be for all ages as well. And then the personal strengths shields. So you can cut out the shape of a shield, and you can make it as big or small as you want out of cardboard. And then you could even, you can cover it with tinfoil so it really looks like a shield. And then divide it into 4 sections. And in each section, they can draw a picture or a word that would represent something that is their unique strength. And then they can design, their name to put at the top. And that is a nice closing activity, particularly for boys. And then you can kind of have the boom whacker sword and the strength shields. So moving on. Comic books has been a big theme lately in this office. So printing out blank pages off, you can Google like blank comic book pages, and then some of them have the word bubbles already on them, and then the clients can make their own comics and make their own stories. And even for younger boys that aren't writing yet, you as a counselor can write the story for them, so they can narrate it to you and you can write it down for them, and then they can draw the pictures. And then I can't speak more highly about reading books to children. And honestly, all ages. I read books to 14-year-old boys, and they just listen. I don't know, there's something about an adult reading a book to a child that especially if it's a book you feel really passionate about, and you're really like, you yourself as the counselor are bought into the book and the story and what it's conveying. So get a really good library, and for all different ages, and books that speak directly to certain themes in the boys' lives are helpful. And of course we have the resource at the BCSCH, so lots of books available there. But yeah, read books to children and just watch what happens. The pipe cleaner check-in. So this is great. This is a great group activity. It's great to always to build the consistency and sort of the opening circle that you could always start with this pipe cleaner check-in. So every one in the group gets a pipe cleaner, and then they just sort of manipulate it and turn it into any kind of shape. And then you can go around and they share whatever they want to say about their shape and how they're feeling on that day. And then often, if they're not comfortable yet to share, a feeling, they're sharing this pipe cleaner art that they've created, and then in that way they feel like they're participating and they're being heard and being seen. So that's a really simple one. And also teaching and practicing deep breaths every session. So this is something I do every single week with every client that comes in, and I use the Hoberman sphere, which there will be in your resource list. There'll be a link to a YouTube video if you're not familiar with them. They're like these little rainbow balls that expand and contract, and then I guide them to breathe with the ball. So the inhale, the ball expands, and then exhale, the ball contracts. And then in that way, there's no speaking. We're just watching the ball move, and that will move our breath for us. And particularly working with children that have experienced trauma, I feel like it's such a beautiful way to empower them, to give them this tool of deep breathing that they can control on their own. So that's something that is very, very helpful, and I feel like if my clients leave and they know how to take 5 deep breaths, then I've done a good job. And then, of course, playing sports. So if your boys are really into basketball, baseball, I learned rugby with one of my clients taught me rugby. I'm like, whoa, this is really fun. So play sports. They often will just love to be outside and having one-on-one attention with an adult. And I always think about this, like if a group is not working, if a session is not working, we just go outside with a ball, boys or girls, and it just shifts the energy. And sports. And then I'm going to say it again, snacks. That's an activity. So eat together and provide them with some nourishment and connection over food. And coming up next, here we go over to Colleen.
Thanks, Andrea. So this is an activity I developed years ago. The stats are from Eva BC on Dignity for Every Woman, and it's something I do with kind of grade 9 and up when I'm doing a classroom presentation. It's a way to engage some conversation with students, whether it's a mixed group or just an all-boy group, because I've, over the years, done a lot of all-boy groups. And so this is kind of a fact or fiction, and I get people to put like a true or false, what they believe, to fill out, and then we go through each box. And I usually have like a little thing of Smarties, so, whoever got the most correct gets the Smartie, couple boxes of Smartie, which goes over well. But when I'm reviewing some of the stats in this, I'll say, like, are you guys okay with this? Are you okay with what this is telling you? And kind of generate some really good group discussion with boys around the lens of sexual violence, sexual assault, and what people are believing. And then we have a conversation about beliefs. And if people didn't believe it, they wouldn't do it. So clearly people are saying they do believe it. The stats are showing that they believe it, but we're having a conversation where you're all saying we don't believe it. So how do you challenge each other? How do you start that conversation now with each other? If somebody's talking bad about a girl in a change room, how do you say that's not cool? So it really kind of opens up to lots of other conversations and questions when we can put together something like this. It's a type of bingo game with all the different stats in it. So the stats at the time were current, but there may be newer, more current ones. I just haven't made a new one recently. And these are a list of activities. Now these, again, I'll say, are for some of my older kids, and I've kind of put, and these will be coming out in a package to you. So stress symptoms. It's just a simple check box, like how is your life going? So when I have older boys, 15, 16, 17, and they're really struggling with stuff, I just get them, it's just check boxes, and it goes through categories like physical, like has your appetite changed? Do you have headaches, tension, fatigue, right? Like what's going on? Just check what is ever happening to you. What's emotional? And then we have a list of emotional. What's relational? Are you isolating yourself? What are you doing, right? There's some spiritual category, and then there's a mental category. And then when we can look at something concretely with, especially older kids, and kind of look, so what's going on here? And I'm fortunate that at our high school we have a wellness center, and in our wellness center we have an actual medical clinic where the doctor is in 2 days a week, and I work closely with the doctors, so we do referrals back and forth, and we collaborate on clients. So when I see a lot of these stress symptoms, and is there something else going on for them? Do they need something like a depression screening? I can work closely with the doctor, but this is a way to kind of get kids to see where they're at and encourage them to see the doctor and to build those relationships when they don't have a doctor, because that's another problem with some older clients I work with, that they don't have doctors. So that's just a simple form. And the stats bingo is just the activity on the previous page. And I have an activity on stereotypes. What do you believe? And I'll break kids into groups of 4 to 5, depending on how large the group is. I have done this presentation with 200 grade 8 boys at once, so it was groups of 8 at tables in the gym at the school. And I'll have different sheets at different tables, and I'll put out like women should be ... and then the other one would be men should be, and I get them to list what they believe advertising the world tells us in these rigid stereotypes. And I'm really upfront about, if you're going to put it on paper, be prepared to talk about it with me, because lots of boys will put things, and this is where you have to be really comfortable with yourself and what you're going to talk about, because some boys will put stuff about sex, about like women should give oral sex to men, and I'm like, well, if you're putting that on there, we got to talk about that. And so being really comfortable with yourself and what you talk about with boys, and being open about talking about these things, because we point out when we do this activity around stereotypes, I really try to pull out the contradictions. If you're saying that women should be kind of virginal but knowledgeable in sex, how does that work? If you haven't had sex, how are you supposed to know about sex to please your man? And you can imagine grade 8 boys, some of the discussions, but also so many boys after a presentation like that are coming up and saying, thank you for this kind of shifting my lens. So it's not about changing all 200, it's having a couple of them have some insight and making those changes and inroads. So it's a really great activity for challenging the stereotypes and how much media and advertising and the things we watch in popular movies shape us about what we believe the role of men and women should be. And we really do talk about men roles too, where we get stuck in these defined roles of men. The next activity that I use with older guys is how do you love him or her? And this is a great checklist, and it's from the Getting Free book by Ginny McCarthy. And it's a checklist. So I just hand out a one-page, and I'm like, if you think this is true for you, just put a check mark. So then once everybody's completed the check mark, and I'm always aware of if there's issues with cognitive stuff, so I might read the questions and go through them each so that people can follow along if they have difficulties with reading. But once everybody's checked, they're 30, then I go through the list, and I say if you've answered, and I list off the numbers. If you've checked numbers 1, 4, 7, 10, 13, you need to put an R beside it. And then I have, if you've checked numbers 2, 5, 8, 11, you put an A beside it, and so on down the list. And each number represents a different style of love. And then it helps us brainstorm. So the first set of numbers for an R is romantic love, based on the courtly tradition of the 11th and 12th centuries, like this knight in shining armor is going to come and save you, that love is noble and pure and sacrificial. So we get to talk about, what do you believe love is? And then there's an addictive love style, and a nurturing love style. So it really has a good conversation without being specific to them and their history, but it really helps them challenge what their belief system is and where they're stuck and why they believe what they believe. But I still love him or her is the answers around, is it romantic love or addictive love? And it goes to the questionnaire of how do you love him or her. This is the Usborne 200 paper planes to fold and fly. It's great. Inside or outside. If I'm doing a group, I will do the paper planes outside at a park. That's just outside my office, and we'll do races of who can go the farthest, and kids love it. The next activity that I have is a decisional grid, and if anybody's taken motivational interviewing, this is from that. This is to help really when kids are identifying their own challenges to me, and if they want to make a change and they're struggling with that and they're requesting that change, the decisional grid is a great way for multiple sessions and to get lots of information. And a decisional grid is about creating discrepancy to help people make change in their lives. We all struggle. We all struggle with whether we procrastinate, I want to lose weight, I want to stop smoking, I want to drink less pop. Whatever the issue is, if we're struggling and we identify that and we want change, this is a tool that helps us create a change and a shift for ourselves. So this is with sometimes as young as 10, depends where they're at and what they identify to me as what the current problem is in their life. So this is, again, very self-directed by the client. It's not directed by me. But if a client is identifying, this is my problem, Colleen, and help me with it, and if we go through some questions with them and they have a good understanding, then we'll work through this. And it's a psychological tool that you're asking people, so if this is your current problem, and if I use that they're drinking too much with teenagers, I'll say, so currently you're drinking. What's the benefit of that for you? So you're going to ask them, how does this help you in your life? And initially people are like, what? It's not good. I can't do that. I shouldn't be drinking. And it's like, well, but you're doing it because it's helping you with something. And it really helps kind of take that pressure off kids because they hear so much, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. So if you can come at them with, well, how does it help you? What is this giving you? And if you can do that in such a non-judgmental way and really support youth in the conversation about what they're identifying as a problem in their life, how it's benefiting them, and we just list as much as they can give you. And then the next set of questions is like, well, what worries you about this current problem? So if we're looking at somebody who's drinking again, so what are you worried about your drinking? What concerns you about your drinking? And you just create a whole list about that. Then the next, well, if you were to make a change to stop drinking or to drink less, what would be good about that? What would be the benefit to you? And so then we're going to list all of that. And then the last question is, what worries you if you were to stop drinking or to reduce how much you drank? And in that is so much information because two of the questions are the same, and the other two set of questions are the same, but they'll give you different answers. You can do scaling questions from 1 to 10. How important is this to you? And like the first question and the last question are the same question, and those are the reasons that keep people stuck. And questions 2 and 3 are what help create change. So if in question 1 they say, well, I drink because then I forget stuff, and they, on a scale of 1 to 10 of how important is that to you, and they're saying it's a 9, and everything else is 5s and 7s, well, they're going to stay drinking with the problem because they don't want to remember and they want to keep everything forgotten. So it really helps have conversations specific to what's keeping them stuck. So it's a really great tool, and I do have that with all the specific instructions of how to use that. But it's really good with older kids who have lots of complex issues going on where when they were younger they've experienced violence in their life, and now people just see them as this, difficult teenager who isn't complying, who's getting into trouble, and they have lots of other issues going on. It's a really great way to help be present with a teenager and to really help focus them on what they identify as something they want to change in their life, and to help them see how to start making those small steps of change to help making them make those movements forward. The next activity I have is feelings bingo. So I, years and years ago, sat down and made a bingo game all about feelings. So I just cut out pictures from magazines and laminated them into these big bingo boards. And I color-coded them, and I did the pictures, and then I did the words, the feeling words that I associated with the pictures. And I just say, if you can I play this with kids, whether it's in a group or just individually. I play with kids all the time. They love it. They're always like, can we play again? Can we play again? Can we play again? And I always say, if you can beat me, you win a prize. So I have tons of little fidget toys as prizes in my office. And to win, if they get a line across, they have to identify one of the feelings and give me an example of when they felt that way, to really get people using the language of feelings and associating, well, this happened and it made me feel this, and really connecting. So you felt sick when your throat was sore, and then I'm just repeating back to them. So it's a really fun game. It's really engaging, and it's just fun. Kids love it. It's bingo, but we're just using the feeling language in it. And with kids, I've spoke about that as just a great open-ended game to have conversation. And that's those activities. And we're back to Sonia now.
Thanks, Colleen. So these are just a couple of resources that BCSTH has created that you may also find useful when supporting boys in the Peace Program. So please check out our Peace Program Toolkit that is full of activities, handouts, practical tips, and much more. And it will help support the work that you're doing in the Peace Program. There's also a link on this slide to the Technology, Safety, and Privacy Toolkit. This toolkit has a section about youth and technology that you may find useful. I also wanted to talk a little bit about our library. BCSTH has a great library. We have a fantastic librarian, Tina, who is very helpful. So I just wanted to put some information about that on this slide. Please check out our library page. And also, she can be reached by email. Her email address is library@bcsth.ca. This is a resource list that our librarian has prepared, and I will be sending out this resource list to folks after the webinar. It just has some information about the topic that we're talking about today, supporting boys in the Peace Program, and this is just a sample of the resources that we do have in the BCSTH library. So if there's something else that you're interested in, a certain topic, that you're looking for that you don't find on this list, please don't hesitate to contact me or Tina, and we'll be happy to help you and guide you in the right direction. I just wanted to show you that he will be receiving this after the webinar. So I guess that brings us to the end of our webinar. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. As we mentioned earlier, in the beginning of this conversation, that this topic is we're just starting to talk about this topic, and we will be doing a follow-up from this webinar in the fall at our annual training forum. So if anyone has any questions, if you could please put them in the chat box, we'd be happy to answer them now or try our best to answer them.
Can I add one final thought?
Yes.
Andrea? I just wanted to really encourage everyone to do boys groups and work with boys. I saw this lack in our community of boys groups, and I always thought I needed a male facilitator, co-facilitator to do one with me, which is what I've heard over and over and over. Like, you can't do a boys group without having a male facilitator, and I do agree that having a male facilitator is infinitely helpful. But I also think we just have to give this information and support these conversations with boys, and it's so important to do it now and to not wait for like a better time. Because
this is Colleen, and I have to agree. I've been fortunate that I have had junior A hockey players co-facilitate groups with me in the past, and I've had the other men co-facilitate with me, but I've also done a lot alone. And I think if you're authentic, it works. And and it comes with challenges when you do it with other young men as well. I remember presenting with one young man who was a hockey player, and he didn't want anybody to know he was a hockey player. But he was 20 maybe when he did it with me. And I'm much, much older. And, I mean, the kids just got so focused on, hey, are you two married? And I'm like, what? That was the conversation. So sometimes it's just being real, and it's just being there with them. And if you're willing to have the conversation and not shy about whatever they throw at you, and I'm always with well, if I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you on that. So I tell them if I don't know, but if they're throwing something out there, then I got to be prepared to talk about it. And I think that has just really worked for me over the years.
Yes, and this is my final thought is if you're doing a group with boys, this works great. Have them write anonymous questions on a piece of paper in the first session, and like encourage them to ask questions that they don't feel comfortable asking their parents, and it's something that maybe they don't want to Google and find the answer there, but to ask me, and it's anonymous, and then each week I go through and answer the questions, and I do answer every question, and then on the last session they get to ask and do it again so that they know that their questions are going to be answered, and they can see that other people have the same questions as them and they're shy to ask them too. So I think it's great that they can have their questions answered without a Google search. That's it.
I'm just going to do you want to take a few minutes to thank my lovely co-facilitators who have shared their knowledge and expertise with us all today. So a huge thank you to Colleen and Andrea. Thank you so much for taking the time out to share this wonderful information with all of your colleagues. And from all the feedback we're getting so far in the chat box, it sounds like folks really enjoyed it. So thank you both so much on behalf of BCSTH.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like there's any other questions coming up, so I think we're okay to end our session here today. Thank you to everyone who had logged on to join us today. We really appreciate it. And please email me. Our contact information is on the screen here, so if you have any specific questions for any of us, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.